You make me sick.
Leave me alone, please.
Hiding in the shadows. Hiding from who you truly are.
Oh.
You can't escape yourself.
Hello there everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Botox Games, and today we are talking about more Switch 2 rumors, Switch 2 goodness. I can't escape, man. I really thought yesterday that was going to be it for a while, but as soon as I'm out, they pull me back in with something mildly interesting. So we have a new article from Game Reactor talking about when the Switch 2 is releasing based on their sources. However, we also have a new kind of follow-up to that from Samus Hunter, one of the more reliable leakers as of late, as well as some Switch 2 accessories popping up for sale on Alibaba. Now, I think that last thing is not that important. People are kind of blowing it out of proportion. However, it is something worth talking about, something interesting to note. So that's what we're talking about today. Of course, if you are new here and you enjoy Nintendo Switch 2 speculation and theories, as well as more general Nintendo discussions, please consider subscribing if you haven't already. Let's get into it. Alrighty, folks, good morning. So yeah, I wasn't planning on making another one of these videos so soon. However, we did get some interesting things this morning, starting off with this article from Game Reactor, UK or EU, one of those. So they say here, Nintendo Switch 2 should release around June and sell for more than 400 euros. The year could end without new information about the launch of the Switch successor, still without an official name. So this is kind of their response to the thing I talked about yesterday, the Joy-Con leak or whatever you want to call it. I don't think it's real, but I know some people in my comments disagreed with me. It's a response to that because there was that Chinese forum post on there, and the person said like the earliest it'll release, I think, is June, I want to say, in that post. But that was just like a random Chinese user. I saw someone trying to say it was the person who leaked the Switch Lite shell a couple years back. I don't think that's true, but if I'm wrong about that, let me know in the comments down below. But regardless, they're saying here, one of their editors gathered from various sources on Nintendo, the supposed Nintendo Switch 2 will arrive around June 2025, maybe July, for a price between 400 and 500 euros. These claims from various developers are in line with other recent leaks and the assumption that Nintendo is simply unable to produce enough machines to meet demand for a hypothetical launch in the early parts of the year. Nintendo has declined to comment on this new information, given the tipster's usual reliability. The launch of Switch 2, or whatever Nintendo ends up calling the console, can now be assumed to be in the summer of 2025 release window, barring any last-minute changes. So we will start right here. I am very critical of a lot of outlets that, report this constantly. And I think this is really no different for me. Is June possible? Yes. I've talked in the past, like, you guys know me. I was always on, like, Team March 2025. I think at this point in time, that's looking a lot less likely as we get closer and closer without the reveal. If we get through January with no reveal, obviously it's not releasing in March. I think a lot of people already would say March does not make any sense. At this point, I am kind of, I did shift goalposts a little bit to April and maybe even May, although I even think May feels a little late. So for me, I'm really hedging my bets on April. However, I could see May, and I guess June, I don't know. I just feel like we keep moving the goalpost. I can't speak for Game Reactor specifically. However, it was this time last year, or I guess it was earlier this year in January, about a year ago, we saw all those reports from like VGC and I believe Eurogamer talking about how the Switch 2 was launching in 2024. Then it moved to like early 2025. Then it was like, okay, well, actually, it's not March. It's going to be, April, May. And now we're talking about June, July. And it's just like it keeps inching further and further away, which I find, frankly, I find it hilarious that this keeps happening. However, I do want to talk about this because we had a kind of a follow-up from a Samus Hunter about this specific article on Game Reactor UK. So they said here, this lines up with what I've heard. For the price, I heard it would have been on the lower side of this range, not $500, but most likely in the $399 to $449 range, depending on a region or tax included, and a late spring release like June. She said here, late spring release, May/June to release, depending on production numbers for launch, aiming for $399/$449 depending on taxes. Presentation already confirmed for this physical year. Speculation between late January/February. No new info on that now, and they still have to announce some Switch 1 games. And yeah, just to kind of throw it in here, someone said Wind Waker and Twilight Princess, and Samus Hunter replied, that's not the games I heard about. So if you're not familiar with Samus Hunter, I've been talking about them a lot recently. They recently, at the end of October, were pretty blatantly teasing Xenoblade Chronicles X would be announced, and it was announced like the next day. They also teased the Donkey Kong Super Nintendo World Direct that we got a couple days before it happened. So out of all of our leakers, Samus Hunter has seemingly done a 180, where before they were completely unreliable, and now it seems like they may be one of the more reliable ones. Of course, always take everything with a grain of salt here, but I do feel like Samus Hunter has gained a bit of, credibility that they didn't have before. So actually unpacking this release timing and the pricing here, man, listen, I think May, June, totally possible, but it just feels like I said earlier, it just feels like we keep moving it by a few months up and up and up until eventually it will be November 2025, and then eventually it'll be March 2026. Like, I know that's not reality, like it will release at a certain point, but as someone who makes these videos and as someone who's constantly following this stuff, it's just funny to see the goalposts consistently be moved when this console will release, because I don't think until today I'd really ever heard anybody say July in any kind of real article about this thing. Now, granted, they're reporting June, but they said maybe July. But still, the fact that July was even mentioned to me is funny, because usually when we're talking about this, it's either like, okay, March through May, and then September through November. But now we're getting into those summer months, and I mean, would Nintendo release the console in June? I mean, I guess it doesn't really matter realistically. Like, I don't know if it necessarily matters if they release it in June. That's not a time that we've seen Nintendo really release consoles in the past, but I mean, they could do it. They could do May as well. I know a lot of people think it might be May because of Golden Week in Japan. You want to get it out before then, before that week holiday. So that's, you know, obviously people will have time to buy it and play it, and they'll be like, oh, I'm gonna buy the new Switch for Golden Week. So maybe that is part of it. I still feel like I'm going to keep coping for April. Maybe that's not realistic anymore. Maybe May or June does make more sense, but I'm going to keep thinking April. I do think it's releasing in the first half of the year, though. I do still believe that, based on all the little tidbits we're hearing about, like, production numbers of the NVIDIA chips, and how apparently there was 800,000 of those manufactured or shipped in September, I believe. And it just feels like things are really ramping up at this point in a way that wasn't true, you know, a year ago when everybody was talking about this, when I was making my videos being like, oh, Switch 2 is not happening in 2024. It actually does feel like things are ramping up, but we just have not seen that reveal yet, which I think is causing so much doubt, you know? It's like, well, if we haven't seen the reveal yet, man, this thing might be a while off. But we know Nintendo's announcing it by March 31st. They told us that. If they announce it in January and release it in May or June, that's actually a pretty similar time frame to what we saw in 2016 and 2017 with the Switch reveal in October to release in March. If they announce it in January and release it in May, June, that's about the same amount of time. So I keep seeing people say, like, oh, that's too short of a time frame, and I feel like that's actually about the same amount of time. So while it is weird that we didn't get the reveal this year, I think a lot of us, most of us, I would say, were expecting it in September, October. It's not the end-all be-all of like, oh, this console can't release in the first half of the year. I still think we should reserve judgment and really just wait and see what happens in January. If it's not announced in January, then yeah, that likelihood is going to plummet, especially if we are going to get a regular Switch 1 Direct in February, I should say. There were rumors about that from Brazil. And I mean, even here, Samus Hunter is saying they still have to announce some Switch 1 games. Apparently not Wind Waker and Twilight Princess. So we'll have to see what those are. I do think some sort of Kirby game for Switch 1 next year definitely makes sense. Fire Emblem makes sense. Metroid Prime 2 and 3. So a February Direct for Switch 1 definitely makes sense. And then you have the Switch 2 reveal either in January or March, somewhere in there. If it's announced in March, it's probably releasing in the second half, right? You would have to imagine. If it's announced even in early March, we're probably talking about like a September release, I'd imagine, or maybe even November they could do if they want to have a little bit of a longer marketing cycle for 3D Mario and all that. You know, in the past, I was so adamant that they need that longer time because of Breath of the Wild with the Wii U and how that was marketed for so long leading up to the Switch. But as the social media age has taken over so much recently, even like recently, it feels like things have changed. The way that information is traveling has changed. It's so much faster than it used to be, even in 2017. I don't know if they necessarily need 9 months to market a 3D Mario game. I mean, they marketed Mario Wonder in 3 months, and that was the fastest-selling Mario game at the time of release. So I don't know if they need 9 months to market Odyssey 2 or whatever it ends up being. They could probably get away with like 3 or 4, maybe 5. And if that's the case, then yeah, March to September or January to May, I think could work for that game. And then, of course, the launch window games would have even more than that, so I think that would be fine. But yeah, I mean, June, July, I guess, sure. Why not? We'll toss June, July in the mix. I'm still leaning towards April. I would like to hear what you guys are thinking in the comments down below. It's really going to be until January that I think we hear something concrete about this thing. I still see people coping for a December announcement. I'm just like, it's not happening. I don't think it's because of holiday sales, but it's not happening this year, guys. There was one other thing here that Samus Hunter is talking about here, and that is the price, as well as Game Reactor. So Game Reactor reported 400 euros, and Samus Hunter is saying 399/449. I've been thinking about this a lot recently as we've been hearing rumblings of a Sony handheld that would be basically able to play PS5 games digitally. That is going to be a very high value, very high quality portable console if it does make it to market. And on the one hand, Nintendo could try to price up a little bit, maybe beef up the Switch a little bit. But on the other hand, if, let's say, the PS5 portable comes out and it's like $800, right, which is probably around what it would be, right? Even if it is in like 2 or 3 years, it would still probably be in that price range. If that's the case, Nintendo wants to be as cheap as possible. So I feel like 400 is the floor. I don't think it goes any lower than 400. I think 449 is possible, depending on I mean, the way inflation has been recently. Like 449, like they might just want to bake that in, right? Like they might just want to announce it at 449, even if that's like making more of a profit than they even need to. They might just announce it at that because inflation has been so bad recently, especially with how the yen is doing in Japan. They might want to mark it up at launch, even if they don't necessarily need to right now. They might kind of future-proof and just price it a little bit higher based on that. So I could see 449. I don't think 500. I don't think they'll go quite that high, but 450 I think is actually pretty possible for this console, especially as like, I mean, just things cost more now than they did 10 years ago. That is just the simple truth of it. So like people say like, oh, you're alienating the regular consumer with a $450 console. I don't really think so. I mean, the PS5 is outselling the PS4 and that thing costs $400. So I think Nintendo could probably get away with 450. I guess at that point, you run into the issue of not having people double dip as much, right? You know, a lot of households have multiple Switches. If the console costs $450, you're probably going to lose a little bit of that, maybe even quite a bit of that, versus, you know, having the Switch Lite at $200. But then maybe you get the Switch 2 Lite, you know, 2 or 3 years down the line, and that's going to be $300 or something, and that becomes immediately very appealing. So we'll have to wait and see on the price. I think $400 to $450, though, is probably what we're looking at for this console, at least here in the US. And then there was one other thing I wanted to touch on here. I don't think it's necessarily a big deal, but people were talking over on Gaming Leaks and Rumors at the Reddit. There was these accessories put up on Alibaba for the Switch 2. And listen, yeah, I mean, these are very clearly like shoddily made product that are just trying to get ready for the Switch 2, so they could be some of the first accessories that you can buy online with this thing, right? This logo here is clearly not official. You can kind of see, I don't know if it's showing up on camera there. You can kind of see like there's like really jagged edges on this, which is crazy because I don't even know how they would do that when this is already... I mean, this is just the Switch logo with a 2 added, but obviously this is not the official logo. This is not the official name as we know it. But yeah, we have some accessories here as well as some dimensions, which I saw people talking. Apparently this lines up exactly with the leaked kind of mold and build that we saw back in September, and then that one YouTuber made like a 3D printed model of it. Apparently lines up exactly with that, which is pretty interesting. I wouldn't necessarily say this confirms all those specs. I do believe those specs and the, you know, dimensions of this console. I do personally believe it. I wouldn't say it confirms it though, because whoever Alibaba is making this really cheap case, they could just watch that video and be like, oh, that's the Switch 2, you know? I don't think it necessarily confirms it 100%. However, it is a good sign. We also had some other cases here. I mean, nothing crazy, you know. It's just basic. It's just a basic Switch case, as well as a screen protector. I believe comparing the size here of the Switch screen and versus the Switch 2 screen. So the Switch 2 screen, if this is real, is quite a bit bigger, like substantially bigger, way bigger than I expected. So we'll have to wait and see on that. But yeah, I saw a lot of people talking about these accessories today. I don't think there's much to buy into it there. I don't think it necessarily relates to like the reveal timing of this console. I think it is just, you know, someone in China trying to capitalize and get some very cheap accessories out before the thing's even announced, so that people can, you know, kind of just hop on there and get their accessories very early. It reminds me of, I think last year, if you remember when they announced the Tears of the Kingdom OLED, that had leaked like 3 months before. And if you went, I think on AliExpress, you could get like a Joy-Con decal and maybe even just fake full Joy-Con like shells that look like the Tears of the Kingdom Special Edition Joy-Con themselves. You could get those shells like before the console was even announced, before that Special Edition was even announced. So, I mean, this happens, right, based on leaks and stuff. So, I don't think there's much to read into this, although this is a nice size comparison of the screens here. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think of this new release timing rumor from Game Reactor as well as Samus Hunter? Do you believe it? Do you think June makes sense for the release of this console? What do you think of these accessories that leaked? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments down below. Of course, subscribe here for more Nintendo Switch 2 news, speculation, theories, discussions, all that fun stuff. Like I said, I was not planning on making making another one of these stupid videos so soon, but I will have a video talking about Donkey Kong very soon, so stay tuned for that, as well as some other stuff this week that I have lined up. I already had a couple videos made, and then this happened, so I was like, oh, I guess I'll just push those around. So stay tuned for that. Of course, subscribe here, follow me on Twitter at BoTalksGames, check out my other channel at It's Me Bo, and until next time, folks, peace.